I know, I need to stop hiking my pants up all the time. I should wear suspenders. My hips are just not big enough. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the 109th day, second year. Welcome to Frank's School. I gave the class vocabulary quiz yesterday, and I wanted to show you how I would correct that. I had told the kids they needed to put their name and the date on the paper, and they would get an extra point for that. And if they didn't, well, I'll show you at the end. Then I asked some questions, and I would ask them. Usually they were short answer. They were almost always short answer. I might be able to adjust that camera a little. They were almost always short answer because it was easier for me to correct. And since they were short answer, I could go in two columns, and so they could stay on the front. Again, easier for me to correct sometimes. And when I'd ask those questions, since they were aloud, spoken orally, I could adjust them. If I asked the question and every student looked blank, I would know that it was not right, or I hadn't taught it well. Or if I was teaching a class of students that weren't as high-performing students, I could adjust the questions accordingly. I had some students, I remember one girl whose heritage was from India in particular, she used to get so mad because I would make the questions so easy. She wanted the questions to be harder. But my attitude toward testing was not to punish. I used it to keep teaching, and hopefully to make the kids feel good about what they knew. But it was, you know, I think it might have had something to do really with the British school system, maybe, and how different I was. Another thing I wanted to tell you was that in class vocabulary, I would let the students run it. After I had run it maybe 2 days, at the very beginning, and then later, maybe just 1 day a week, I would turn it over to the students. And a student would come up and run class vocabulary. I used to love that. Now, since it was all ritualistic, all the student had to do was ask the right questions. Write on the board, not get flustered. I gave the student the power to zap. If a fellow student was giving him a hard time, zap. I never told the students exactly what happened, but I did put a mark down in the grade book. You were not allowed to let student behavior affect student grades, and I think rightly so. But it was enough to get the kids a little bit worried about that, and it gave the student up here a little bit of power. That was my way of dealing with public speaking. To some extent. I never forced a kid to get up here. I would only do it by volunteers. I remember one student broke his arm coming into school. He sat down too quick and fell off the chair and broke his arm. I said I wouldn't let anybody run the class unless they were sitting there when the bell rang with their notes open and ready to go. That's how much they like to do it. It wasn't a bad break, but after a while he raised his other arm and said, I think I better go to the nurse. Well, anyway, when I did that, I'd put a wavy line, and here are the 8 words. Remember, I started with 12, reduced it to 9, and then only gave 8. If they 4 sentences or less, extra point. Simile, extra point. Allusion, extra point. And they had to underline the words. Well, here are 2 sentences that I wrote. As the sallow-skinned priest plumbed the well to find his dropped crucifix, we need a comma because that's an introductory adverbial clause, a nun who had lost her mind and had dressed in tawdry clothes leaped from the parapet of the monastery. I don't know if a monastery would have nuns, but it wouldn't matter. Sallow-skinned, I don't know if I needed skinned, but to make sure that the teacher knew I knew what sallow meant, I put that there. All right, and then, so I've used 1, 2, 3, 4 in one sentence. Oh, I hope I didn't forget one. Oh, no, 5. The doctor's ego needed no bolstering. Now, you see I've changed the ending. I put an ing on it. Making it a gerund, using it like a noun, something you can't do in German, incidentally. because he could repair a ruptured spleen as sleekly. Now I changed that into an adverb. Sleek was an adjective, but by putting ly on the end, I made it an adverb, but that's allowable. As Victor Borge could punctuate. Well, I've just been teaching about punctuation. Victor Borge, he's famous for his phonetic punctuation, in case you weren't watching that. That's an allusion. As, I've made a comparison. That's a simile. Alright, so I've done the job. When I would bring this up to the teacher, me, would look, is the date there? Is your name and date there? Did you underline the words? Did you strike the words out as you used them? Then I would let them go. Now, when I would go to correct these, I used to do them as two separate quizzes because it was two ways of thinking. I could do this so fast. I corrected if they were all right. So fast that sometimes, oops, I was going too fast. I could make that an X. That was wrong. A very, very fast system. I did, and let's say I had 10 questions. Well, they could have gotten, if they had their name and date there, that would be an extra point. They could have got 11 out of 10. 10 points plus an extra one. If they missed 2 but had the name and date and stayed neat, that would be 9 out of 10. Now, if they had scribbled something out, I would not give them that neatness point, I called it. All right, that would be one quiz. Now here was the other quiz. As the cell, and I would mark it twice. Spelled right, used correctly in a sentence. Plumbed the well, spelled right, used correctly. To find his dropped crucifix, spelled right, used correctly. And then there's tawdry clothes for yourself for the parapet. Yep. 2 points for each one. One for the spelling and the one right over the word for the spelling, the one near the word for whether the sentence proves that the student knew what it meant. The doctor's ego needed to know bolstering because he could repair a ruptured spleen as sleekly as Victor Borge could punctuate. Now, if this had been spelled wrong, I would have done that. If the sentence had not supported it and not convinced me, I would have done that. But I did good work. There were 8 words, 2 points for each one, that's 16. I did it in only 2 sentences, there's 17. Got a simile, 18. And I've got an allusion, 19. So I would get a 19 out of 16 for this, this work. Now obviously it wasn't usually, kids didn't always do so well. Okay, one other thing I guess I wanted to say was this this semicolon. I would use that because there were commas here. And one of the rules of a semicolon is if you've got a list, if there's internal punctuation, well then a comma is not enough. You have to go to a semicolon. And I used to hit that again and again. Okay, I'm not completely done with class vocabulary because I want to show you some of the work over the years that students did. This is my work, but that students did. So now and then I'll mention it again. How often, I'm not sure. But I guess tomorrow I'll begin to speak about the archaeology of this farm. See you then.